Are the skills that are keeping you employed today the same skills that will keep you employed in 5 years' time?
Welcome back, everybody. I'm delighted again to have Paul Watts with me. G'day, Paul.
G'day, John. How are you, man?
I am just wonderful. Thanks, Paul. All the better to have you on the show. Look, Paul, personal development, particularly in the sales environment, it's critical, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes.
Why?
Well,
if I'm an expert salesperson, I know how to do my craft. That's going to serve me for a long time, isn't it?
I think if all you want to be is a great servant to your client base, if all you want to do is the same role for the next 20 years, then you're still going to need to take control of your own personal professional development, because selling and the role of sales is changing. So I think if even if you just want to stay in sales, you don't want to progress, you don't want to move up the ladder, you're still going to need to invest in yourself. You're still going to need to take responsibility for managing your own personal professional development to maintain yourself at the top of your career.
Now, why did I think you were going to say that, Paul?
Well, let me
obviously, I totally agree. I totally agree. And you know, we have touched on this subject in a couple of the other meetings we've had, you know, when we talked about sales as a profession. And the reality is it is a profession in the definition you put forward. We need to be very professional, and to be a professional in any field, but particularly sales, we need to ride the wave of change.
Absolutely. I mean, a question I would ask is, do you need to be employed in the next 5 years? And then a follow-up question would be, are the skills that are keeping you employed today the same skills that will keep you employed in 5 years' time? Because over 70% of salespeople believe that their role will be radically different in the next 5 years than it is today. And if that's true, then, you know, what does that mean in terms of the professional development that will have had to have taken place to maintain that relevancy? Now, I think we're just entering 2020. And I know we've just dated this discussion now, but you know, we're not far away from 2020. A whole decade has passed. Now, if I were to tell you at the start of 2010 that by the end of this decade, you're going to be doing most of your business on one of these things, and you're going to be sending clients proposals on here, you're going to be receiving orders via text message, what would you have said to me 10 years ago?
I've always believed in change, and change is going to happen, so I probably would have believed you, or questioned you whether you're right, because there are lots of different options. Now, right now, we've got artificial intelligence and machine learning and all that sort of stuff coming, right, if not already here, and there's a lot of that happening in sales right now. So what does that mean to a salesperson? I tell you, it's going to substantially change the way in which you do business, the way in which you interact with your customer. You'll be using these tools to help. And if you don't learn what those tools are and how they change the way in which you sell, then you will be redundant very, very quickly.
Without a doubt. Think about the last time you were at the airport, John. You know, when you're walking down the airport and you see somebody on the escalator at the side of you, and they're walking forward and you're just walking outside the escalator, is it easy to keep up with that person?
So what's the point you're making, Paul?
Is it easy to keep up with that person? It's not, is it?
No, of course not.
It's not. It's really difficult to keep up with that person. And the reason that it is because they've jumped on the elevator, and the elevator is now accelerating their performance. They've learned that taking advantage of technology has gotten them ahead. And today, most salespeople have not jumped onto all of the technologies that they have at their disposal. The ones that have are the ones that are on that escalator moving forward, and they're accelerating past all of the salespeople who are running alongside to try and keep up.
And probably even more significant, the people you're selling to have changed the way they do business and the way they buy and so on, and the way they use technology. And if you're not engaging with them with the right tools and and you're understanding how they're going through their buying journey. And if you still think they've done it like they were 5 years ago, hey, they're not even going to talk to you. You won't engage.
I could not agree more. So I think it's really, really important for a modern sales professional to take responsibility for their own personal professional development, to stay relevant, to stay ahead of the game, to stay ahead of the competition, and ultimately take responsibility for where their career is taking them.
So you raise a very interesting point there. A salesperson should take responsibility for their own development. And to some extent, a lot of salespeople rely on their company to bring to the table what's needed to help them develop. Is that safe? If I'm working for a really good company and they're providing training and development and coaching and so on, isn't that enough?
No, I would suggest not. Let me share a little story with you. So we worked with a gentleman. He was a sales leader in his organization, and he saw that the VP of sales was retiring 18 months out. And he thought, I'd like that position. I would like that position. Now, if we were to use the analogy, well, surely the organization will take care of us and will help us to get to that level, then we shouldn't really have to do anything other than let somebody know, and then the organization will take care of everything else. This individual decided that they weren't going to just let the organization take care of them. They were going to take responsibility for themselves. Mm-hmm. So they actually started a coaching program. They invested in it using their own money, and they started a leadership coaching program. Now, what was really interesting was that this individual, 3 months in, actually found out that the president of the organization didn't see a place for that person in the organization, was actually trying to move them out of the organization. That was 3 months in. Now, they, again, took responsibility. They had a choice to make. Do they stay where clearly they're not going to get this VP role now, or and try and salvage their career, or do they leave? Now, this individual chose to stay. They chose to stay and try and earn the respect back of leadership within the organization. And I'm pleased to say that through investing in themselves, through actually trying to perfect and remedy some of their opportunities for improvement, let's say, not weaknesses, but they saw opportunities for improvement in their own development. They worked in those areas. They were actually able to earn back the trust of the leadership. And I'm pleased to say 3 years later, they're now in a GM role, so a general manager role. They've moved up within the organization, and they are now on the promotable list in that organization. That would not have happened if that individual had not taken responsibility for their own personal professional development.
A great story. And let me add another one to this. I was working with a young lady, or working with an organization. There was a young lady that was doing okay in sales, selling in the cybersecurity business. And her company used to provide lots of training, but it was all very product oriented. And she came to me and said, look, I need help. I'm selling to the financial industry, and I've got all this product knowledge, and she even had university studies in cybersecurity and so on. So she was very, very knowledgeable about that aspect of it. What she didn't have good expertise was around her target market, banking and finance. So what we did is helped her develop a program where she developed into a domain expert in banking and finance with specific knowledge around cybersecurity. And within 18 months, that lady went from I'm just struggling along and achieving reasonably well at sales to I'm now the best salesperson in the whole company, and the company want me to help others. And so they promoted her to a very senior role to drive change through the whole organisation. So it's personal development and taking charge of your own personal development. I totally agree with you. Is absolutely critical.
Now you just told the story there, John, and I want to ask you a question. Does it make sense to promote a top performer into a leadership role? Because again,
that's probably another whole discussion.
That could be a whole other discussion, but the reality is, of course, that without any sort of training or professional development, the skill set that you need to be a top performing salesperson is not necessarily the same skill set that you need to be a top performing sales leader. And
it's not just a skill set, it's a whole set of attributes that everything. You need to be a leader that you don't necessarily have as a salesperson. So I agree. If you want to move your career into management and leadership roles of some sort, you need to think about how you develop yourself, your capability. And again, it's this old head up here versus the heart, and you need to be able to work out how you need to change the attributes and skills and capabilities you've got to do another role. But it's the same in any profession. We talk about it a lot in sales. Top salespeople don't necessarily make the top sales manager, and sometimes it's actually counter. Because top salespeople go in and start wanting to tell all their subordinates how to sell, rather than supporting them and coaching them and developing them so they independently can sustain the business. And a good sales manager can actually step out of the business for quite a while if they've been working in there and developing the capability of their people. That's a very different skill to selling and being a top salesperson. I agree with you. Self-development in that scenario is absolutely critical, but the companies need to understand that too. And I see too much of companies promoting people without preparing them for the new role.
Absolutely. We often see that they're setting them up for failure. And again, this is why I think it's very important that sales professionals recognize that they have to take some responsibility for their own personal professional development and can't just leave it all to the organization that they work for.
I'd go further than that. You can get a lot of assistance from your own organization in helping you develop it, but you need to take total control. I mean, total control of your personal development. You need to map out where you want to go, what skills and capabilities you need to develop, where you need to practice those capabilities and skills, and how you're going to do that, and leverage what you can from your own company. But it's worth investing a few dollars now to go take the career where you want it to go, and you can't rely on other parties to do it. You've got to do it yourself.
Completely agree.
That's a good subject, and I'm really pleased we covered it. Our professional development is really important, and I'll let you convince me that sales is a profession. So on that basis, we need to be professionals, and if you get accountants and all sorts of other people, they invest. They know they've been taught, they understand the importance of investing in their own development. Salespeople need to be in the same boat. Thank you very much, Paul. Love the discussion.
No, my pleasure. Thank you for having me on the show.